Hey guys, here Red here, and in this video, I am continuing my Future Pinball BAM Essentials All-in-One video series. And this video is concentrating on Pinup Popper and Baller Installer. So before you jump into this video, I recommend that you go to part one and make sure you install the Future Pinball BAM Essentials All-in-One package, which will include all my guides that are completely updated, as well as the complete install of BAM, BAM OpenVR, and extra tools and apps and other things I've installed. Make sure you're fully updated because this guide is designed with the assumption that you have this package installed. Okay, and then come back to this video. All right, so Pinup Popper and Baller Installer. So those are two different things. Pinup Popper Baller Installer is an installer that basically will install a collection of programs, being Visual Pinball, Future Pinball, BAM, Pinup Player, Popper, Pinup Popper, the front end. And it has two example tables, one from VPX and one from Future Pinball. And it's done in a way so that when you give it your choices of what kind of setup you have, it'll then try to arrange everything based on that automatically for you, so you don't have to go through the process of setting everything up manually. Now, for Future Pinball, it's really good. It includes all the main stuff that we need. But there are some things that people may or may not know about it based on the unique needs for Future Pinball, and in particular, PinEvent tables or tables that have PuP-Packs that need certain options selected or certain things set up in a certain way, as well as wanting to launch DMDExt if you need to, and as well as needing to disable DOFLinx. So we're going to kind of talk about that in this guide, and just address whatever unique things you should probably be aware of when using Baller Installer, or if you're just someone who never used Baller Installer but you have Pinup Popper, how you can best make use of that as well. And you have a link to the Baller Installer if you want to, go through that and get the latest. That goes to Nailbuster's website there. And of course, this guide can be found inside my Setup and Guides folder in the Pinup Popper Baller Installer Tips. It's right in here, okay? All right. So, of course, I already mentioned you need the All-in-One Essentials package installed to get to this point, to make sure you have all the guides I'm going to be referring to, or any other files that I use in this video, just to make sure. Now, one thing, in the past, it was recommended that you run Future Pinball in Windows 8 compatibility if you were having crashing problems. But those crashing issues, they were like constant crashing issues, no matter what. If you're having that kind of a problem, make sure your Windows is completely updated, and make sure that you are running with the newest version of BAM, which should be included in the Essentials All-in-One package. So don't do this anymore because it will hamper Future Pinball's performance greatly, and it is no longer recommended at all. All right, so desktop users. So this is really important. So if you're a single screen desktop user, and you're going to use Pinup Popper to launch Future Pinball tables, then you need to make a couple of changes. You basically have to go to the launch and close script. So let me take a look here. So I'm just going to load this up right now. So this is basically going to be the Pinup Popper setup program. So what you do is you go in here and you go into the Popper setup and you go to emulators, Future Pinball, and launch setup. So because we're using a desktop setup, you would want to remove these entries in here. Okay? The reason why is because it's enabling that option by default, for anyone who may be in a cabinet or whatever like that, may want that option enabled for all tables as a starting point, as in like all normal Future Pinball tables, you want to have the Backbox enabled. So with a desktop, well, you don't ever want that. So you have to remove these lines if they were still in there, which in this case they were. And then same thing on the close script as well. You want to remove them as well. Only if you have a single screen desktop setup, okay? And then you hit OK, and then you're good. Because if you don't make those changes and you launch the table, well, then it's always going to launch in arcade mode, which you do not want in a desktop setup. All right, so here it's talking about DMDExt or DMD extensions, and what it is, and where the support topic is, and talks about my DMDExt guide, because you can use Pinup Popper Baller Installer to launch DMDExt, and I think even the newest version is actually starting to support launching DMDExt for Future Pinball as well in a similar way as I've shown in my guide. Basically, this is going to be addressing how to launch it in the way you guys want, because there's a couple ways you can have that happen, and we're also talking about DOFLinx here in terms of for Future Pinball PinEvent tables. You want to have DOFLinx not running at all because it may interfere, well, it will interfere with the DOF on the PinEvent table. So you can't have both working at the same time. So you have to make sure DOFLinx is not running at all when running a PinEvent table, and we can use Pinup Popper to control that on a per table basis if you want. All right, depending on whether you even have DOFLinx running at all, right? And the biggest evil for PinEvent PuP-Packs is the Future Pinball Backbox. So the Future Pinball Backbox is a separate window display because Future Pinball supports having a backbox display integrated. You don't have to use a separate program just to have that capability. But if you're using a PuP-Pack, well, then you can't have both on the displaying on the screen at the same time because the Future Pinball Backbox will cover the PuP-Pack. So you have to disable those features, but it's a kind of a pain to do. So Pinup Popper, on a per table basis, because you don't want to have to manually do that all the time, right? So you can have Pinup Popper automatically manage all that for you, so that whenever you launch a PinEvent table with a PuP-Pack, it disables the backbox for you. When you launch a regular Future Pinball table, it enables the backbox for you, and that's part of that launch script we changed earlier, right? So we're gonna address that as well. So here it's talking about the Popper launch script and the close script. So that's what I was going into earlier. So the idea is that you will update your launch and close script so that you can manage whatever you want, whether it be DMDExt or the Backbox or DOFLinx or whatever else you want for that matter. So that's what we're dealing with in this tutorial here. All right, so launch script examples. So what these are is these are basically examples of how you can customize your launch script to do various different things, and then allow Games Manager and Pinup Popper to make those changes based on what you choose for each table. So, for example, if you want to disable the Future Pinball Backbox and you had this added in like we talked about earlier, then you can make a choice in Games Manager that will then disable that. If you want to have DOFLinx closed, again, you can have that closed based on what you choose in Games Manager. Or you could change it so that it always does that no matter what, right? That's how it was for the Backbox. We were having it always enabling the Backbox by default, and then you had to choose to disable it. Well, for a desktop player, they don't want that at all because they never want to have that enabled. So that's why we had to remove that option earlier, right? So for DOFLinx, you could always make it so that DOFLinx is always closed no matter what, or you have to choose to close it just when a PinEvent table is run. You also have an example of DMDExt if you want to have that run only when you choose to. So it's not going to be run by default every time for Future Pinball. You can just choose to enable when it's going to be run. Or you can have the opposite where DMDExt is always been run every time by default, but then you choose when not to run it. And so you can do either or. This is what we had before. This is the previous example that was in Baller Installer setup. The newer one, I think, uses this now. So it's up to you to figure out which one you want. You're just going to have to make sure you check the launch script to be sure about what it's actually doing, right? And then REG ADD commands. Okay, so the idea here is you have a selection of registry commands or registry settings that you can make changes to for Future Pinball settings. That's what we're doing here for the Backbox, but you can do that for any setting for like, graphics like full screen or windowed, or you can have reflections on or off. And you will find a list of those in our Popper and Baller Installer Tips section, Future Pinball Settings command for Popper, and that's what's in here. All of these reg commands, and they're all listed for what each of them are, what you need to select, to change your setting. It's all in here. It's basically the same commands we would have added to our batch files here that I've talked about before in previous videos. These batch files, if you ran these without Pinup Popper, would make changes to the registry and then run Future Pinball. Well, that's what we're doing here, is we're making changes to the registry for this option, and these commands that I listed in that text file can be used. So if you, I already have it open. Yeah. So for example, let's say you wanted to change reflections, because that's the most demanding thing on many tables. So you could choose to, have that enabled, or have it, if you set this to 0, disabled. And if you copy this command into your launch script in the same way as how we've done it here, then that can be an option to use. So this will make more sense when we get to the, to show you how it's done. Okay, so lookups. This is basically how you can choose what is in the pull down menus in Games Manager. And I'll show you how this works. That's basically what that's describing. Okay, so now we're at the point where we can, do a complete example. So let me just get the Popper first, and then I'll explain all of this, how it works. Okay, so before I get to this entire launch script example, let's just load up Pinup Popper's settings here. All right, so this is our setup program for Pinup Popper. So I'll just kind of go back to what we're talking about here. So basically, if you go to Popper Setup and you go to Emulators, and you go to Future Pinball and your launch setup, again, this is where all those launch script examples will be added, is in this section, or in this section if you want to have stuff for when you close it, right? So that's what we were talking about in there. For our examples here, so let's just bring this over more so you can see it. So for example, disable the Backbox here. So this example has, and I know it may be hard to see, but basically what this is saying is if custom 1 option is set to PinEvent, then it will carry out that command, the REG ADD command, which is what we have here, to disable the arcade mode, and it'll do the same thing to disable the second screen, second monitor enable, right? So, in other words, and same idea here for DMDExt. So if, the second custom option has Future Pinball DMDExt added, then it's going to, carry out these commands to launch DMDExt. Okay, so that's what the idea of how this is working. And then at the bottom, this is going to launch Future Pinball. Now you don't have to necessarily make changes here if you're happy with everything, but you can add to it, like I mentioned before. So so basically, when those are set up the way you want, using whatever examples you have here, then if you go to Games Manager, and then you go to your Future Pinball table, then what you do is you go down to our custom options here, which is your custom launch parameter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can have whatever you entered in here. So for example, I said if custom 1 equals PinEvent, make the changes to the registry for the arcade mode, and if custom 1 also has PinEvent, make changes for the second Backbox monitor being enabled as well. And that's what this is here. Okay, so when I go to my drop down menu, you can just enter this manually if you want, but it has to be exact, upper and lowercase, exactly how you have it in here, right? Or if you go to the Lookups tab, you can add it in here or in any of these for that matter. And then that way it will have a drop down menu for you automatically. And then that way you don't have to type it in every time. You can just drop it down and then add it in that way. Okay? And the same thing for when we had launching DMDExt. We had that in our launch script. So now I can choose Future Pinball DMDExt. And then now what this means is this will now make DMDExt run with this table. Okay? Now if I used this example here in my launch script, the no DMDExt, that means that it would have ran DMDExt every time no matter what. And if I didn't want it to not run, because maybe I want a PuP-Pack only and nothing else because I don't have a separate real DMD display, then I would have to go in and choose no DMDExt. Now, if that drop-down option doesn't show up for you, you can either type it in manually or again, go to your lookups and add it in here. Okay, for me, I didn't have both of these by default. I had to add the one in there, right? So either way will work, and you can do that on a per table basis. Okay, that's the whole idea, and that's what makes Pinup Popper fantastic. Is that you can have so much control per table for doing whatever you want. So you can go back to your launch script and change it up however you want. All right, so. For example, I don't think so by default, this is not closing DOFLinx, right? So what I can do is I can copy this example here. Oh, get back in there, you stinking dinkin'. I can copy that, and then I can do the same thing. So there you go. It actually copied in nicely. I'll just leave a space there. So anything that says rem, that's just a comment. It's just text for you to read. This is not something that gets executed at all. So because this is batch script, right? So so here you go. So see, if custom 1 is a PinEvent, then it will task kill DOFLinx. In other words, if DOFLinx is running, it will make sure it's closed down. Okay? And then if I hit a check mark and I hit close, then if you go back to Games Manager, again, so now, because I have PinEvent in here, it's going to both disable the Future Pinball Backbox settings and it'll make sure that DOFLinx is not running. Okay? So that's another simple way of adding your options. Or if you want to change it, you can change it so that DOFLinx is always closed, no matter what. It's up to you, however you want to do it, right? So if you, for example, if you wanted to have, let's see here. Let's see if I can get an idea here. Actually, yeah, well, let's add another one. So, for example, let's do similar to what we had here. Okay. So, yeah, I guess we can do that. So let's add a reflections option. Okay. So if I want to have that in there, let's just go down here. Now, these have to be added before Future Pinball gets launched. Okay, that's really important. So in this case, I'm going to change this up so that disable reflections. Okay, if let's say custom launch 2, or custom launch custom 3. Custom 3 equals reflections off. Okay, so I'm going to use that again. So then if custom reflections equals off, I only need the 1 actually, and then change this to custom 3. So if custom 3 equals reflections off, and then I need to change this registry line, right? So how do we do that? We go back to where I showed you. in the setups and guides in our Popper and Baller installer folder, and then you bring up the text file here that has all the commands, and then you look for the registry command that will change reflections, which is this one right here. Okay, and we'll copy that. I'll just minimize that and minimize that, and then so I go here, and then we want to replace the registry command that we had before. Okay, so you just have to be careful. Oh, hold on. So there you go. Okay, so that's going to be going right up into there, because the way you have to pay attention, because the bracket end and the bracket start is the whole command being kept in there, because you may have spaces and whatnot. So that's basically how we have to do this to make this command work. Okay, so therefore we have our reflections command in there, but then we have to change that to 0. So now we have an option for reflections off. So that way we could do that for any table we want, right? And let's add another one for reflections on. All right. So the same idea. On. And that's it. Like, look how simple that was to add, right? So now all you have to do is you have to now just go to your lookups and add that in there if you want, or you could type it in manually. But see, we have to hit the check mark to save our, what we added. And then if I go to Games Manager and I go to my lookups, now I can add for custom 3 reflections on, reflections off. And actually, you got to be actually, you know what? I'm going to change that. So you have to watch your upper and lower case. Okay. So I'm going to save that list, but then I'm going to go back and update that. You really got to pay attention to your upper and lower case. So, all right, which one was on? That was this guy here. So, N. Okay. Oh, actually, it was correct. Okay, I just had it on here. That's all. Okay, so it already was correct. All right. So there you go. So now we're set to go. And so let's say I wanted this particular table to have no reflections. That's all I got to do. Boom. Then it'll automatically make the change for you. If I want to have the reflections turned on, then I can do that. Now, just keep in mind that if you make a change to the settings when this table launches, then the next time Future Pinball launches, if you never specified this on another table, well, then it's going to use what the last setting was, right? So that's why sometimes it's good to have the default launch script have options like that enabled by default for all tables, and then you can have the option come in afterward. That's kind of like what we did for the back glass, right? Or the Backbox. By default, I had it being enabled every time, so that way every table will have that enabled by default, and then I made it a choice to disable it. Okay, so that's something to consider. That if you want to add options, that's fine, but then you have to make sure by default you have whatever settings you want to be there for sure, if no option is chosen. Okay, so it seems a little tricky, but it's actually not too hard. So just look at the original example that's in here. You can see you just add the reg add lines with nothing else. So the easy way to do that is you just go like this, right? So then you come down and reflections, right? So all you got to do is add the reflections line, and then I'll put a rem in here just to remind myself. So enable reflections by default. So now what this means is when this launch script is launched, every time it's going to re-enable the reflections. So then you have to choose whether or not you want them on or off on a per table basis. So every table will have them on, but if you choose to have them off in Games Manager, so I'll save my settings. So when you come to Games Manager, now reflections will always be on unless you choose this and hit save. Or I mean, sorry, unless you choose this for turning it off and hit save. And then this one particular table will have reflections turned off. All other tables will have reflections turned on. Okay, so I know I know it might seem a bit much at first, but when you really look at it and you have the examples to go by, and you can just copy and paste, the examples we have. It's not really complicated. You know what I mean? Like it's not hard to set up. You have all the examples here, and you can control. Have changing the resolution in Future Pinball, for example. Let's say if you wanted to launch VR tables specifically, you can add another option saying like VR in here, and you can change your launch script so that whenever VR is tagged, well then it'll change your resolution, it'll disable the backbox. You can combine a whole bunch of different things into one single command. You know what I mean? There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. So yeah, I just wanted to demonstrate those options, so that way you guys understand how powerful Popper can be. It's what sets it apart from other front ends, which is one of the reasons why I really like using it. So yeah, so the launch batch script is very powerful, and the same thing with close as well. If you want to do extra stuff in the close script, then you can do that as well. Like for example, he has it here where, if custom 2 was Future Pinball DMDExt, then task kill DMDExt. Okay, so you have different options that you can do it. Like for me, I like to have a DMDExt closed all the time, no matter what, just in case. Like for example, this close example here has just task killing DMDExt all the time, no matter what. So it's really up to you how you want to do it. Okay, so because remember, when you exit Popper, you may want to have Future Pinball put back to a default set of settings, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind. So yeah, so basically this whole launch script example was a way of showing you how to set up DMDExt, DOFLinx, and the Future Pinball Backbox in Pinup Popper, and then have the options to make the changes. Basically what I just showed you. This whole thing right here will do all those things of allowing you to disable the backbox, to make sure DOFLinx isn't run, and to run DMDExt if you want, and that's what was already added in here in our example. So that's basically what this section's talking about, okay? All right, and what does this stuff do? Well, that's what we just talked about. And what to add into Games Manager? Well, that's exactly what I just showed you. All right, and as I just said, you can change this up however you like. You can mix and match it. You can do anything you want. And then I showed you in Games Manager how you can add the launch options in there. Oh, but that's one other thing I'll mention. If you're running say a PuP-Pack, well then you're going to want to have keep displays set to none, so that the PuP-Pack will not have anything blocking it from Pinup Popper's media, because you can have Pinup Popper's media, like your videos for the backlash or DMD or whatever that's shown while you're browsing through different tables to launch. You can have those kept on by default, which by default they are. So then if you don't want a table to have any of that displayed when it's launched, because you're running a PuP-Pack or you're showing a DMD or whatever, well then you have to go in here and choose what you do or don't want to have displayed. Now if you want none, you just make sure none of these are selected and you hit save, and then it automatically does none in capitals. Okay? So that's something to keep in mind when you're using PuP-Packs or DMDExt with your table. So you can, and again, you can do that per table. There you go. Now, if you want to do that for the emulator so that it does it for every table by default, then that's what this is here. So you can click on here, and then you can choose what to enable or what to keep on, or you could just have none of them on as well, and then you have to choose what to keep on, right? So just keep that in mind. That's all about Pinup Popper's media, how you can control that. A lot of people forget about that. And then when they go to launch a table with a PuP-Pack or something, then all of a sudden they're wondering why nothing's showing correctly, or nothing's changing, right? All right. Okay, so so now I guess I'm gonna show an example of how to install a PinEvent table, since you guys have never you may have never actually done that yourself. Okay, so let's pretend we've never installed our PinEvent table that we just downloaded. Okay, so how are we going to do that with Pinup Popper? How should we do that with Pinup Popper? All right, so basically what you want to do is this is for example, a PinEvent table that you've downloaded, and they're going to be organized just like this in these kind of folders. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the table, and we're going to copy that to our Future Pinball Tables folder. Okay, now I think I already have it in here. Yeah, I do, but I'll do that anyway. All right, so Sonic Pinball Mania we now have copied in there. So the second thing you want to do is, as it's talking about in the guide here, it's saying install the table, install any library files if there are any. So those, if there are any library files, those would go into your libraries folder here. Okay, add the table to Popper under the emulator list. Okay, so that's basically saying that when you go into Games Manager, then you can add new games. So basically, you go Future Pinball, and then you scan to see whatever new games have not been added. So these are all the games in the Future Pinball Tables folder that have not yet been added to Pinup Popper. Okay, now I only want to add Sonic, so I'm just going to click on that one, and then you click Add to System, and there one game has been added, and now that's why it's highlighted as green. So now we have it added to Pinup Popper's database. Now, if you want to rename this game in Pinup Popper or update its info in Games Manager, then you're going to want to do that now. Now, the reason why is because we need to change our POV config file to match, right? So now you can see Sonic is now added to our database. So if I want to update any info, for this, or if I want to, let's see, no, not that. Sorry. Or if I want to, change its descriptions or get any more info, I'm trying to remember. It's been a while. Import data. Yeah, let's take a look here. Web lookup. Let's see here. It's been a while. All right, I haven't used this for a while. Oh my God, that's right. Okay, so if you wanted to, for example, okay, so see, here's what's listed for all the names in the database for what's known for Sonic Pinball Mania. So I think my database file might be a little out of date. Yeah, because it's only got the older one on there. So the whole point of what you're doing here is if you want to change the info that's in whatever known database for this table file, that's the idea of what I just tried doing there. But we don't really have any updated info yet in the database. So, but what you can do is you can rename our current table to whatever one of these we choose. All right. So if I wanted to choose this one, for example, and if I wanted to rename the game to whatever format is being used, or if I wanted to rename the current game manually to whatever I want, right? Now, not this one here, but, it just, because I had that highlighted, whatever I type up in here, that will then be applied to this here for you. The bottom line is, the idea is that if you want to get updated info, you can add all that in yourself manually. If you want to update the table file name to match whatever the screen name is in Popper, and you do that in here, you want to do that first. The reason why is because the table file name has to match our config file, which I'm about to install now. So do whatever changes in here you need to do first. Is the bottom line, what all that's about. Then you can install your config file and make sure that it's renamed to match the table file. Okay, so in this case, well, I only have it's only a desktop, so that's the version I'm going to install. And then we go to our BAM folder, or BAM OpenVR if you're running in VR. And then you copy that to your config, and you paste it in here. I already had one, but that's okay. So that's going to give us our proper camera views, or POVs, for the table. Now, if you had a cabinet set up, you have to do this to give yourself a proper POV. And then you just have to make sure that the name of this file matches the table name. So that way when BAM loads it up, it's then going to say, hey, oh, this is the table we're loading? All right. Does it have a config file? Okay, we'll use this config file and apply the settings for the POV to the table that way. If there's no file here, or the name doesn't match, BAM will create a new one, but you won't get the nicer camera views or POV that I've already set up for you guys. So that's why it's important that you understand why doing this needs to be done first before you copy over and use the config file. Okay, so I know it's a little long-winded explanation, but you know, very, very important. All right. So now copy the PuP-Pack into the PuP videos folder. So I've technically already done that, but I'll do it again anyway. So we'll copy him. Or actually, maybe I didn't do it already on this one. Hold on. Maybe I didn't. So basically, I'm going to go to my my pinup system folder, and then my PuP videos, and oh no, I don't have it in there yet. Okay, I'm going to paste the PuP-Pack in there. All right, and then in the PuP-Pack folder, run the option BAP file. All right. So all you got to do is you go in here, and then out of all the options that are in here, you pick the one that matches your setup. So if you have a 3-screen setup on your cabinet, then you would do that. If you have only a 2-screen setup, then you pick the one that matches your backglass ratio. So 16:9, 5:4, or 1:1. If you only have a single screen desktop setup that you're using, then you're going to pick whichever one you're using based on what kind of setup you're using for Future Pinball. So if you're trying to run Future Pinball windowed so that you can show the PuP-Pack on the same screen, then you would run this. In my case, I'm running it with PupStream, you know, so that way I have the PuP-Pack displayed on a dummy monitor screen or a second screen, and that's what I'm doing here. Okay, so I choose this. All this is telling you is that, hey, all the files have been set up in a way to make it work for your setup, and it's just saying make sure these options are enabled to allow it to work, is what that's saying. Okay, so now that that's done, again, make sure that you are set up to allow the PuP-Pack to work, which is in here in PinEvent v2 settings. Now I'm running in desktop, and I have, this is normally disabled by default, so I enabled PuP-DMD, I enabled PuP-SSF, and I enabled PinEvent PupStream to true, because this is false by default, okay? All right, and if you have a cabinet setup, they're normally enabled by default. VR, they're normally disabled, so you'd have to enable them yourself manually. And this is what will make it work for all PinEvent tables by default, to allow those features to work. All right, so it's not in the list, but you know, you have to, if you've never set it up before, you have to make sure those are enabled, right? All right, so Popper Games Manager, again, we've already done that. So I've added this table here. So now I just want to make sure that I have none, because I don't want the media from Popper to show up after I launch the table. And then I want to make sure, well, I can add this regardless. This will just make sure DOFLinx and the Backbox is not running no matter what. It's not going to hurt even if it's a desktop setup. And I don't need DMDExt to run, so that's fine. And that's it. That's basically all I need. And yeah, that was good to go. That's all you need to do. Now, if you have a cabinet, then you have to make sure you update your DOF config tool, DOF config files. So you log on to DOF config tool and you update it, you generate your files, and then you copy that over. That's something you should be doing on a regular basis anyway. But if you're adding a new PinEvent table, you may or may not have the newest update that's required for the table to even have DOF. So make sure you go onto DOF config tool and you get your latest updates for that. And that's it. That's it. I guess we're at the bottom of the guide. Yeah. So that's about it, really. And then when you go to launch Popper, it's going to automatically manage all this stuff for you and make it all work, no problem. So I know that's kind of a lot to kind of go through and explain, but you know, I really wanted to make sure people understand that with Pinup Popper, you have a lot of powerful options, and if you've never worked with batch script before, it can be confusing. So that's why I wanted to take the time to just show you, you know, all the extra options that you can do to control every table the way you want. You know, like it's very, very flexible, very cool, and for not just for Future Pinball, but for anything in Popper, really. You know, lots and lots of options, even way more than when I showed you in here. But these are the basics that will make sure that, you know, Future Pinball tables work the way they should, and the PinEvent PuP-Packs will work the way they should. So yeah. So now another thing that I'll point out is that you know, I recommend everyone always, you know, having the Future Pinball BAM Essentials All-in-One package installed to make sure you're up to date. And I still always recommend that no matter what, because I'm going to always make sure that it's maintained. However, the newer version of Pinup Popper has a very cool feature where if you go to Pinup Popper or Pinup Popper setup, it's got this little icon over here. So when you check for updates, so if you use Baller Installer and you got the newest Pinup Popper setup, when you click on this, it's gonna basically do a check. Okay, it's gonna do a check to see if you need any updates for all the programs it installed. Okay, so what we do is we're going to check for our updates. All right, so there are some programs that Baller Installer installed that could use an update because there's a newer version. So in this case, we've got some Pinup and Visual Pinball updates. So if there was a Future Pinball update that was for some reason not included on your system or not copied over, or you know was not yet part of the Future Pinball BAM Essentials package, you know, or sorry, that you didn't have installed because you didn't install this, it may show that on there. So all you gotta do is apply updates, and then it's going to download and install all the updates for you automatically. In this case, it's updating Visual Pinball. And there you go. It updated everything, and it backed up anything it did overwrite. And that's it. Like, so look how simple that is. So, you know, with Future Pinball, if you want to make sure you're updated to the minimum stuff and you use Baller Installer, that's another way of doing it. But if you're not sure, either way, just install the latest Essentials All-in-One, and that will have the latest BAM OpenVR, and it will also have my guides updated and the extra files, because Baller Installer may or may not have everything that I include with this, because it's pretty big, right? So if you want to have everything that I recommend having, make sure you install the latest version of this, and you can install that at any time, before or after a Baller Installer update. So yeah, so there you go, man. You know, like how cool is that? Like how simple is that for updating everything? So there you go. So that brings us to the end of our Popper and Baller Installer guide video. thanks for watching, guys. There's a lot of support on the Facebook groups and for Baller Seller and Popper and Nailbuster's wiki webpage is a wealth of information. For Pinup Player, for PuP-Packs, for Pinup Popper. This should be the first place you're going to for info. And there's also the Facebook group as well. And all the links for all this stuff is all on here. So make sure you go to the wiki for, a lot of the extra detailed information for Pinup Popper. Just a really great resource. Lots of info, and it's got links to the Facebook group and the forums on there. So yeah, so highly recommend you go to the wiki. Should be one of the first places you go to when you have questions or problems. So yeah, so that's it, guys. Watch for my other videos. I may have a few more still coming for the next guides I have. So yeah, so I'm gonna have ones for like single screen users and how to run PuP-Packs with that as well. And then we'll see. We'll see after that. I don't know if there will be any more, but I guess I'll see you in the next video, guys. So thanks for watching. Bye.